What's going on, everyone? Welcome to second portion of a Tuesday edition of BYP. Rich Quinones here at Rich Q on Q as we welcome in our good friend Lloyd Vance at Lloyd Vance, NFL writer, researcher, historian, also PFWA award winner, former ESPN NFL Network contributor, BC FHOF selection committee. That's a lot of stuff in one bio, my friend. What's going on, pal?
Doing good. A lot of acronyms, Well, I'm just glad to be back with you. And everything's heating up. It's NFL. We're finding out who's real contenders. And
Yeah.
The only thing is, man, a lot of injuries, Rich.
Yeah, you know what? We'll start there. A lot of non-contact injuries. We saw last night, Monday Night Football, Kyler Murray. I was just actually talking with Brandon about this before when we were recording 27 and Q Lloyd. And, that's a tough spot for that kid. I mean, we saw Garoppolo go down. We saw Deebo Samuel go down. Jerry Rice tweeted, hey, don't give your best offensive player, run him up the middle. And then we saw Murray. I'm wondering, let's start with the quarterback position and Murray going down. Does this affect Arizona's mindset with him going forward? A lot of guaranteed money. He's been with them, I guess, now 3+4 years. Big time injury. Hopefully he's ready by September. But, just overall, talk a little bit about that situation down there in Arizona, where, let's be honest, the season has just basically been an absolute just debacle.
Yeah, Q, situation where, Kingsbury may not be coming back. This team has been losing a lot of games. They've waited a long time for Arizona to come around. And as you're saying, a lot of money, a lot of guaranteed money. Kyler Murray's obviously going to come back and get his opportunities. But I think maybe in the draft, they bring in a young guy.
Wow.
Maybe it's not a first round guy, but maybe he's a second, a third round quarterback, and he's kind of there. And they figure out the situation from there. So you have to see Kingsbury. Does he come back? Does Steve Keim, the general manager, he come back? The Bidwell family owns that team, and they're going to make some tough decisions. So I hearing that Kyler he's one of those guys may not be as beloved in the locker room as some of the other quarterbacks around the league. So a lot to chew on. It's unfortunate injury, and as you're saying, it was non-contact. So with his speed game and running around, can he come back? And I remember covering Don McNabb the first year after his ACL, and he came back and he said, it took some time for the range of motion and just feeling his normal self. So we'll see. Training camp, be here before you know.
The funny thing about McNabb too is, and I remember covering those teams as well with you, when he started to put on muscle and really started to lift heavy, that's when he started to get all those ridiculous injuries, right? The nicks, the bruises, the tears, the issues. Murray's shorter guy, diminutive type of quarterback. It just goes to show you, when everyone sits there and they get on these quarterbacks or say, just bring in this guy, man, you're investing a substantial amount of money in a player that you perceive will be the face of the franchise, the franchise quarterback. And man, that just, I don't care if it's week 3, week 4, week 10, week 13, when they go down with this type of injury, that's got to be deflating within an organization. Look, San Francisco, Lamar Jackson now banged up with Baltimore, Jimmy G in San Francisco. I mean, I don't think they really understand how much money is being invested in these guys.
Yeah, Q, and that's your leader. So yep. I'm looking at the cap is $208.2 million this year. And you're talking about some of these quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, and
yep.
He's making close to $50 million, and Pat Mahomes over 40. I think Kyler Murray's over 40. That's a substantial piece of that salary cap. So you're going to have to, in other areas, kind of cut and maybe slack off. Maybe you don't get that nickel corner that you need, or
yep.
You're not paying that third wide receiver. So, a lot goes into these decisions, and they're building their whole team around these quarterbacks, and they're supposed to be the unspoken leader. And so we'll see how they rebuild. But you're right, teams, it's a tough proposition losing your stud quarterback. Now we saw the Niners continue and win as well as the Ravens, but you wonder how long they can sustain that.
Yeah, and let's go to the Niners for a second. Nice segue. They absolutely roast Tampa Bay 35-7. Mr. Irrelevant, Mr. Purdy comes in. He does well, 3 touchdowns in his first career start, outshines Brady. I think there was a stat, first time quarterbacks against Brady were like 0 for 7. I think a lot of that also had to do with Belichick, but besides the point, they got the win and they don't have Jimmy G. And then you look on the other side of the football, Brady, I'll get your thoughts on Purdy and then I want to get to Brady, but I see a guy that is just done. I see a guy, his body language. I mentioned this a month, 2 months ago, everything that was going on off the field, which, it has to be talked about. It's starting to take its toll. He just looks like a defeated guy. They might not even win a division, believe it or not. You might have Carolina. You don't know how it's going to play out. Even if they do get the playoffs, they're going to get blasted. We'll get to Brady in a second, but how about San Fran, 35 points against Tampa? The young kid does what he has to do. They lose Samuel, which is a big loss for a couple of weeks, but yet they're 9-4, and their defense is still kind of carrying them as we expected.
Yeah, correct. And when you talk about the Niners, obviously you start with that number 1 ranked defense in yards and points allowed. So they're going to build their game plan around efficient offense, not turning the football over. And as you're saying, I didn't agree with the way Shanahan was running Deebo Samuel up the middle. He's not a running back. I know they think you can use those plays, but you're just putting those receivers in danger's way, running them up the middle and allowing them to get hit. But in terms of Purdy, he was cool, calm, efficient. In terms of his numbers, he was 16-21, 185 yards, 2 TDs, no interceptions.
Yep.
And he can also move around as well. He's a guy, he's obviously not going to run the ball like a Lamar Jackson, but he's going to move the chains when needed. And he's getting the ball to his playmakers like Brandon Ayuk. And that big throw he had to Christian McCaffrey on the sidelines was pinpoint and allowed him to just turn, take it, and then go to the house for that big touchdown in the game.
Do you think the way they're constructed with Purdy on offense, running, that type of scheme and that system, we've seen it with Shanahan before, just implement quarterbacks of lesser names, so to speak. Is that sustainable, or will their defense need to have to carry them come playoff time? Because I think I mentioned this, so forgive me for repeating myself. I thought they were tailor-made to potentially go into Dallas, to go into Philly and beat those teams in the playoffs. But I was going on the premise that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be healthy and under center. And now you also lose Deebo Samuel for a couple of weeks. He might come back right in time for the playoffs, or if they get a bye. But right now, as they're presently constructed, can they go on the road and beat a Philly or Dallas?
I think they can if they can get the timely turnovers, and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, who might be the defensive player of the year, gets the pressure on the quarterback, and they're able to get to shorten the field and get the ball in good situations. But the thing is, Q, we've researched this over years and talked about it. Rookie quarterbacks have never made the Super Bowl. So, a lot of them have done a good job and kind of been caretakers of the car, leading it the right direction. I think of Ben Roethlisberger. He played in the AFC Championship game his rookie season, but it's just so tough. And they're going to look at the tape and try to find ways to, confuse him. And there's that playoff pressure. So he's doing a great job now. I know he's a little banged up. He has an oblique injury, but Purdy, it seems to be their guy, and they don't want to sign anybody else. So they're going to give them some opportunities. But I think they're going to take it one game at a time, and they should win the West. This is a huge game coming up this week against Seattle, who they're favorites to win in that one. And it's going to be interesting to see how that team progresses, but they have a lot of weapons around him. Particularly, you have Trent Williams, one of the best tackles in football, protecting him. George Kittle, a lot of people aren't talking about. So there are pieces there, and I think they still can win a lot of games.
Yeah, good point with the rookie quarterbacks. Marino 7-2 in 83, then 84, 14-2. They went to the Super Bowl and got hammered by the Niners 38-16. It's tough sledding to do with some of these guys, especially when you're talking about a kid that was Mr. Irrelevant as opposed to a Hall of Famer. And Marino, how about the other side of the field? with Brady. I mean, uh, I see a guy that um, it's not the right fit right now, right? I mean, I just think there's too much outside noise, all these extraneous variables. I joked with my buddy who's a big time Niners fan. I said, book it. He's going to be in San Francisco next year. Like I I don't think we can overstate the loss or the reshuffling of not having a Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles, who just looks overmatched again. Um, I think that's a huge hit. I think Brady was so accustomed to having some type of um, regiment, so to speak, like a lot more of the culture where all those years in New England, it was more like almost like that militaristic kind of approach, right? You're getting there early, you're staying all day, you're getting there late, you're having meetings, you're doing the extra work. I'm reading these reports and I'm hearing a lot of times he would meet with players and have tweak some of the plays here and there. And that really hasn't been the case. Like, I just think everything is kind of caught up to him. And he just reminds me of a fighter that in his heart can go a couple rounds, but body won't allow it. And that's father time, man. I'm not going to say he's a shock quarterback. I'm not going to say that, but it's starting to become abundantly clear that it's just not working out right now in Tampa. And if he wants to continue his career, I don't see it in a Bucs uniform.
Yeah, it's interesting. You went to the boxing now, GQ. I know you're a big boxing guy. And I was going to say, we see so often heavyweights. I remember, Muhammad Ali and these guys, they just didn't know when to kind of walk away. I remember somebody told me about Ali fighting Joe Bugner, and he had problems getting rid of him. This guy who he would have probably got rid of in 2 rounds in his prime. And, the body's just not fire time, as you're saying, it's just not conducive. Yeah. And this is new ground we're talking about. Yes, he's 45 and he's defied all the odds, but he's looking extremely old in these situations and, looking a little crotchety, in my opinion. You see him fighting with Mike Evans over and over again. They don't seem to be on the same page. They're yelling and screaming at each other, and he's seeing receivers drop the ball. I saw Chris Godwin drop the ball and he's glaring at him. And, the mystique is the blooms off the rose. It's just not the guy that was in the Patriots. And that first couple of years in Tampa was magical. And maybe he should have just stayed retired and kind of left it the way it was. He had his Super Bowl ring there, great run. And, AB was his guy. I know Antonio Brown is a head case, but he knew where to put the ball to him and he could go get it and make plays for him. And he just does not seem to be on the same page with these guys. And you can also throw in Gronk in there as well. That was his guy as well, who stepped away. So, Q, you don't have to say he gets knocked out like Steve Young did, but what's it going to take for him to decide, to walk away? I know he had the off the field issue. His wife was asking him to quit and he decided to keep going, and now they're apart. I could see him maybe trying to get to the Niners if they want him, or maybe even I've heard the Raiders. The Raiders maybe moving away from Derek Carr. Yeah, I'm sure you want to talk about that game as well. But you're seeing that Derek Carr may not be the guy with the Raiders, but Tom Brady at 46, is he that much better than what's already there?
Yeah, and I like you brought up Steve Young, who got knocked out of that playoff game. That was the wild card game against Aeneas Williams, pretty much ending his career with the Cardinals. I'm just waiting. I know Brady's time is up when he starts doing the old school Marino, when Marino would go like that. Every time he throw a pick, he'd go like that to the wide receiver, like you're running the wrong route.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. You knew where you were supposed to be. I did everything right.
Exactly.
It's your fault.
My friends and I would always laugh when he would throw that pick, and right away the strap comes off, and you gotta go to the mailbox and cut across. You mentioned some of the carousel with the quarterback position. Look, I like Derek Carr. I've always been a fan of Derek Carr. I can't explain. Full disclosure, I fell asleep the other night. I thought that game was pretty much. They're not. My heart almost wanted to go with the Rams because I'm a little partial to Baker, but then I'm like, come on, man, the Raiders should beat them. You got the kid coming in a couple of days reading the playbook, and they lose that game. I just want to read this to you real quick. So they lost to the Chargers 24-19. They had the bad loss to Arizona in week 2 with a couple of those fumbles on the return, 29-23. They lost to Tennessee 24-22. They lost to Kansas City 30-29. There's 4 winnable games right there. Okay. There's 4 winnable games right there. If you are a Raiders fan and you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, no. 4 winnable games, basically, it turns the tide of your season around, because instead of being 5-9, you're 9-5, and you're right there in the thick of things. And we're not having this discussion right now about Derek Carr and the head coach and going forward. But I think Derek Carr's time is up, and I don't know how you go forward with the head coach. You got rid of a guy that actually got you in the playoffs for a guy that doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
Yeah, and he has that Belichick pedigree that everybody thinks it. But we could go on about Belichick's assistants that just have not gotten it done. We see it over and over again. Joe Judge and Patricia and all these guys. And McDaniels, this is his, some say, second, third opportunity. Let's not forget he took that Colts job and decided to walk away from that. So, it's interesting because the Raiders have decided to go the Patriot way. So Davis has brought in a Patriots assistant, former assistant, to be its head coach. And I think the GM is Zeitler, I think the name, or Ziegler is the GM there. He also comes from the Patriots tree, and they're going to try to run things their way. But something is amiss there, Q, and you're right. This is the game they should have won. They're winning 16-3, well in hand. And then they have a lot of stupid penalties and things that just give Baker that glimmer of hope. And Baker Mayfield had the game of his life. He's throwing the football down the field, single coverage, and he goes 98 yards in under, I think, a minute and 40 seconds. So, something's amiss with the Raiders. And you're right. They're one of those teams. They're in playoffs last year, and you figured, okay, they're going to ascend. And they've taken a step back. So definitely some changes are in order. They've already cleaned house with a lot of old Mayock's draft picks and so forth, kind of blaming that old regime. But, the people are there. They bought in Devontae Adams and
their defense stinks.
It's not getting it done.
Their defense stinks. They can't get teams off the field on third down. They're hard. Most points per game allowed in starts by quarterback since 1970 merger. Take a guess. Minimum 50 starts. Take a guess who that top quarterback is on a team that had the most points per game allowed in starts by quarterback since 1970.
Most points allowed. Maybe it's a Chiefs quarterback or something.
No, who are we talking about right now?
Derek Carr.
Derek Carr. Defenses are giving up 26.3 points per game. The other, Chad Henning, Mark Bolger, Dante Culpepper. Carr has never had a defense ranked better than 20th during his time with the Raiders. But everyone wants to get on the quarterback because the quarterback touches the football the most. He's under center. He's the face of the franchise. The Raiders have fielded a top 11 scoring offense in 2 of the last 3 seasons. Based on common sense, a top 12 or perhaps even a top 15 defense basically gives you 3 to 4 more wins a year. We're not having this conversation. We're not. You cannot retain Patrick Graham. He sucks. He stinks. I watched this knucklehead with the Giants. You need a defensive overhaul, and the head coach is bad. It's just like the nonsense in Denver. How is Hackett going to survive what's going on there? We went from Carr, we talked about Brady, we talked about Murray wind injury, and now Jimmy G. Now you got the albatross of a $240 million deal with Russell Wilson.
Right. And you're talking about another team with the new regime. George Payton takes over from John Elway. They said John Elway didn't know what he was doing, and Payton creates this mess. He's the general manager. He's been empowered. The Walton family has now bought this team, and Pat Bolin passed away, and his family had to sell it. Now the Walton family, the Walmart folks, own it now, and they paid a ton of money. And it's going to be interesting to say, okay, they bought the team after the season started. So they're going to want to come in and create their own picture. Obviously, they are stuck with Russell Wilson in that situation. They're paying him a ton of money. Another guy that kind of we're hearing doesn't fit in the locker room, and players are not feeling genuine love for him. And, how are they going to clean that mess up? And it may very well be Hackett and moving on from him, but another team at disarray. And now you see Russell Wilson had a very bad concussion. He was knocked out in that game. And I have a feeling maybe he doesn't play the rest of the season. So we'll see how that goes.
100%.
Denver,
no need
what
to play
a mess. Raiders a mess. And we talked about, I remember all the way back in our preview show, we talked about the AFC West. This
Best
is the
division
best
in
division in
football.
football.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? They're terrible outside of the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chargers are trying to fight for that last playoff spot, but they're their worst enemy as well.
You actually, we can talk about this a little more another day, but think about this. You can make the case for basically one head coach in the AFC West keeping his job, and that's Andy Reid.
Correct. Because Staley, let's not forget, they keep losing all those close games. You go back year after year, and yeah, he's that gambling guy, like a riverboat Ron. He's going for it on fourth down in his own end and everything. It's kind of come back to bite him over and over again. And Herbert is a great young quarterback. I know they've had some injuries. Everybody has injuries, but the Chargers are just one of those teams. They just can't seem to get out of their own way. And yeah, they had a good win this week, but they have some work to do fighting for that 7th spot, and the AFC is so competitive.
A couple minutes with Lloyd Vance, BYP Back Your Play. Rich Quinones here. I was thinking about this too. With some of those names, I still think if we just bring it back to the NFCs for a minute, Washington, right? Whether it's going to be Heineke or whether it's going to be Wentz. I'm just going down the line. Actually, I'll play the game with you right now. I'll go right down the line. Buffalo, Miami, New England, we know the quarterback situation. Who's to say what's going to happen with the Jets, right? It could be Wilson. It could be White. We don't know. Baltimore, you got Jackson. Cincinnati and Cleveland looks like it's good, right? Obviously. Pickett, they believe, is going to be the quarterback with Pittsburgh. Tennessee, Tannehill, I don't know. Indianapolis, Houston, right? Carr with the Raiders, Heineke, Wentz with Washington, Daniel Jones with New York. Carolina is going to need a quarterback. Atlanta is going to need a quarterback. I don't think that kid's going to be any good. The Saints are going to need a quarterback. The Rams might need a quarterback. What are we going to do with Stafford?
Yeah,
Seattle,
he has a bruised spine, by the way. So he has a bruised spine, and they're saying he may need some neck work on it. So at his age and winning the Super Bowl, does he just say, you know what, I'm good?
And that's why my theory is, so McVay liked Baker Mayfield coming out of Oklahoma. They had a wide receivers coach scout wide receivers, and they took a liking to Mayfield. Obviously, he got drafted by Cleveland. He's a reclamation project, right? It's just me. Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there. Like, I think Stafford, even if he comes back, one more hit, as you said, might retire. That might be it. But I think they keep Mayfield around thinking that they can build, maybe try to get the max out of Baker Mayfield and kind of run it back, get healthy defensive players, get some offensive players back. And it's not like, if you think about it, in that division, who are you really competing against? Arizona stinks. Seattle, I still don't trust them. And it's a 49er squad. So I think they might be looking at Mayfield as the apparent, the replacement to Stafford, or as a bridge.
And how crazy is that, Q? The guy gets waived, and we're all like, all right, Niners won him. And Shanahan comes right out. He says, we're not trying to claim this guy. And the Rams
Hey,
were the only team to put in a claim for him. So,
which says a lot.
and it shows you that Les Snead, their general manager, and McVay did their homework, and they had a relationship with this guy. And, as crazy as it sounds, he comes in on Tuesday and he wins on a Thursday night, which was just improbable. I mean, the magic was in the air, but maybe we've seen this before where a coach believes in a guy like Dick Vermeil believing in a Kurt Warner, who had been all over the place and arena football and been cut by the Packers. And he gets his opportunity and he goes from there. Now, obviously, Baker has his warts. We know that from his time in Cleveland and in Carolina as well. But he made some big time throws out there. So he does have that Heisman Trophy ability that he showed. And I do think you're right, because the Rams can get him on a cheap. And also, they don't have many draft picks. So I think I could see him coming to training camp next year. And depending on what happens with Stafford fighting for that job.
And remember, too, with Vermeil in 99, that was out of necessity because Trent Green goes down during the preseason.
Correct.
But to your point, they saw something in him, right? I mean, I like with the Jets with White, that kid's been cut how many times by the Jets. I don't care that they lost the game the other day. That kid knows he's playing for his career, right? If that makes sense. So all those shots that he was taking, he won that. When you have teammates coming out with a shirt with you on it. I mean, if I'm Zach Wilson, I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, like what do I friggin' need to do? Like I need to get my ass in early. I got to be the good teammate, study, get better, because that might be it for Zach Wilson. But it's kind of to your point, having a coach believe in you. And I think we're kind of past the stage where, hey, man, if you get a diamond in the rough, a second, third, or fourth round or a hidden gem, if they can play, they can play.
Yeah, and it's crazy because everybody said for so long, you have to have that top 10 first round quarterback to make the Super Bowl. And, it sometimes may have been right, but now you see so many of these top draft picks just flame out. They're, they get taken in a top 10, a guy I'm going to give my lackey to this week. We can talk about him, Mitch Trubisky. He's a prime example, he gets that high pick, going in the draft, and everybody thinks he can play. And, why not give some of these guys that are struggling an opportunity? Because the way the game's played now, the field's so spread out. They're allowing, something like 7-on-7 football that's so prevalent in the younger ranks. They're able to throw the football in space. And if the guy has timing and has a good enough arm and understands the offense, he can make some plays. And some of these first round bonus babies like Zach Wilson you're talking about, they're coddled. They're not as hungry as a Mike White. They're comfortable when they shouldn't be. They need to be fighting for their job.
Yeah, no, excellent. That was the hill that was one of my many sports hills I was prepared to die on, Mitch Trubisky, but not anymore. Because I remember my thought was, if you just have convictions and you believe in the draft pick or the trade, you make it. And if it's a miss, it's a miss. If it's a hit, wonderful. All right. So we got a couple nice little games kind of highlight. I like the way it's broken down, right? You get Thursday night football, you get the Saturday ones because we're creeping in to the holiday season. 49ers, this is a big game. By the way, the Carolina helped out the Giants by beating Seattle, but Seattle's at home. They're getting 3.5 to the 49ers. So you got another rookie quarterback coming in, 12th man, that defense. You're starting to see Geno kind of revert back, right? You're starting to see some of the things that, the bad habits, so to speak. You're also seeing a run defense. And I kind of go back to the game against the Raiders game where they ran all over. Now they've dropped 3 out of their last 4, sandwiched with a win against the Rams. But I think the 49ers defense will go on the road. They'll do enough. They'll force a couple turnovers and they'll pick up the win. I'm not sure if they cover it. I think it'll be a close game, but I can see a 20-17 type of game.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because, the NFC West, any team can beat each other, and we've seen them all trade each other back and forth. And Seattle, as you're saying, they started hot early, and Geno, I think he's better when the pressure's not on him. Now, not having Kenneth Walker, their great running back, he's hurt with a high ankle sprain. I just don't know if he's going to play in this game. It's huge. We saw that last week in the game. Just putting too much on Geno's shoulders is not a good idea. And Purdy and that offense is going to be efficient, as we're saying. They still have Ayuk, they still have Kittle, McCaffrey. I think they have enough weapons to make plays. And then I think Nick Bosa is going to make Geno Smith's like miserable, because we know that Seattle offensive line is just lacking. They've tried to fix it over many years. 3.5 points. I think the Niners can cover that, and it's going to be probably a tough physical football game, but maybe they win, by 6 points or so.
Only game that kind of stands out Saturday, the highlight game, NFL Network 8:15 kickoff. Buffalo at home 10-3 against Miami 9-5. Line is ridiculous when you think about it, right? Because everyone was on the Tua bandwagon, and rightfully so. He was playing well. Now you're starting to see kind of, Miami slide back a little bit to reality, but Buffalo is laying 7.5. And I think a lot of it's going to have to do with probably the weather. If it's going to be nasty as all hell, snow, sleet, cold, the fish, they don't like that kind of weather. That's a really tough spot. I know Jet fans are going to be watching this game with a lot of interest, but that's a tough spot for Miami. I don't think they cover the number, and I think this is a game where Buffalo absolutely waxes them. Like I'm talking 30-16 type of game.
And let's not forget, Q, that they Buffalo wants their revenge, because they lose to Miami in week 3, and Miami's pounding their chest. We're the new beast of the East, and Buffalo, they're the number 1 seed again. And they want to protect that spot and get that bye that's so huge, and have home field run through cold Orchard, New York, and nobody's going to want to play there. Particularly, you talk about these warm weather teams like Miami coming in there. Can they handle the elements? And Tua was awful last week. The second straight loss, and he's 10 of 28 in that game, and he can't get the ball to all those playmakers. And it's going to be interesting to see how this team attacks him. Now, Ed Oliver and that defensive line is going to give him some problems, because Teron Armstead, their left tackle for Miami, is not playing. He's injured, and that's a big loss for them. Now, 7.5 points.
It's a big number. Maybe
a big number. I think in the end, this could be a field goal type game where Buffalo wins, but I think Buffalo definitely wins. The money, you may want to get that money line, and the over is 42 points. So, maybe it's right around there. I think like a 23-20 win for Buffalo, and they just beat the over under. So, it should be an exciting game to watch.
Allen threw for 400 yards in that loss. So I just don't like what I'm seeing offensively from Miami. And I still think Tua has taken a ton of shots, even though from an offensive line standpoint, he's only been sacked 17 times. But yeah, I can't put my finger on it. I like Tua. I think he's a good quarterback, but you had a Charger team that had a shorthanded defense, and they were able to get by him. Like I'm kind of seeing them come back down to reality a little bit. And this, it's not, what team's playing well, it's when they're playing well.
Yes.
So that's where I am with that. Here's a game. So this line's moved ridiculously. The Lions, who all of a sudden, the quote team you wouldn't want to face. By the way, Jared Goff is having a really nice season. That line, the Jets were favored, then the Lions were favored. Now it's at even right now. So the money's fluctuating and moved to Detroit. Now it's pretty much a pick 'em. I'd have to check the injury report, see if it moves by Wednesday, Thursday. The Jets are at home. Obviously, they're coming off the loss. We don't know what's going to go on with White. He says he wants to play. Jets are coming off the loss against Buffalo. And the Lions, again, people were laughing at that line, getting 3.5 at home against Minnesota, and they wound up beating them by 11. So go figure, the NFL. This is the game the Jets have to have. And again, for selfish reasons, as a Giant fan, I'm kind of pulling for the Jets because I want Detroit to take an L, but Detroit's playing really well. They can score a boatload of points. If anything, I think the total will be in play in this one, but I just really like what I'm seeing from Detroit and Dan Campbell.
Yeah, the over under is 44.5. So that'll definitely be in play. Both these teams can score some points. And the key thing, obviously, is going to be that Jets defense led by Mosley and the rest of those guys, Sauce Gardner. They are one of the most efficient units defensively in the NFL, and they can get after people. And Goff, hopefully good Jared Goff continues to show up for the Detroit Lions because they've been doing a great job winning all these games in a row. I think they've won 3 out of the last 4. The only loss was to Buffalo on Thanksgiving, and they've really turned around under Dan Campbell, and that unit's playing some good ball, particularly Amon St. Brown is doing a great job, and Shark, the other receiver, and Williams, the running back, is great around the goal line, and defensively they're doing real well with Hutchinson, that number 1 draft pick right there. So I think this will be a fun one to watch. Obviously, I had it at the Jets -1. But I somehow I think Detroit is really hot, and they're just going to keep finding a way to win. Now, this is outside the elements. This is a dome team playing outside, and we'll have to see about the weather. But I'd say right now that you take that +1 in the Lions in this one because Mike Waite's banged up. Is he going to play? And if Joe Flacco, how much does he have left if he starts this game?
Well, that's why you have to have Zach Wilson as the backup. Flacco, I mean, what a friggin' waste. He looked like he wanted no parts of that. It was like oh shit, I gotta put my helmet on. Detroit's won 5 out of 6. And by the way, to your point about outside, against Chicago and the Giants on the road, they scored 31 in back-to-back weeks. So they're putting up, I'll say this. I think one of the players that's kind of gone under the radar this year in the NFL, we talk about comeback player of the year. I think you have to give some acknowledgement here to Jared Goff. I mean, I pulled up his numbers real quick. He's thrown for 3,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 7 picks. His best year as a pro, you can make the case, was 28 touchdowns, 7 picks. Second year with the Rams, where he threw for over 3,800 yards. He's had some big yardage years, but with the Lions in 2 years, he's thrown 41 touchdowns to 15 picks. And he hasn't been sacked. So he finally has an offensive line. I know we're talking about all these players, Geno Smith and Saquon, comeback player here, but let's not forget about Jared Goff. I think he's played really, really well.
He has, and he takes him to Super Bowl, and McVay and Snead say, you know what, he's not our guy, and kind of throw him on a scrap heap. And that trade actually was kind of a win-win for both organizations. They get Stafford, and they win the Super Bowl. And then Goff is a guy, he's at one time his contract was one of the highest in the NFL, but now it's a value contract. It's I think between $20 and $30 million for a starting quarterback. So they can draft other pieces like get Hutchinson, like they did this year at defensive end, and try to rebuild that defense some more, and improve a very good offensive line. Get pieces other than having to worry about their quarterback. So they'll have some decisions to make in terms about bringing back Jared Goff, but I expect them, Campbell seems like him. So I think he's going to have him back and have him be his quarterback. And then he'll get that belief from his head coach. And the Lions, how about them? They're a feel-good story around the NFL. So we'll see if they can keep it going, but also the Jets are a feel-good story as well. Salah has them playing well too.
All right, 2 more, and then we'll get to game balls before we got to wrap it up. Titans and the Chargers, both squads come in 7-6. Titans on the road, they just got absolutely humbled against the upstart Jags. And we mentioned the Chargers a little bit. Chargers are laying 3, not the 3.5 with the hook at home, but the courtesy 3. I think this line is exactly where it needs to be. But the Titans, they had, a little bit of that run, and now all of a sudden they've kind of come back down the earth. And we mentioned the Chargers, they're very inconsistent. So I think that line sits exactly where we need it to sit between these two. The Titans really need a win, man. They've dropped 3 in a row, 4 out of their last 6.
Yeah, Q. This I've been back and forth on this game. We had two teams that are desperate. You have the Titans, obviously, who are going to win a very bad AFC South, but they have looked terrible the last couple of games. The Eagles kind of put out that blueprint on how to beat them up, and you saw it happen again last week with the Jags. So, this is an important battle for them, and the Chargers need to maintain their 7-6, and then they're fighting for that last spot. So this is a huge battle, but I think Derrick Henry's not done. A lot of people think he's been bottled up the last couple of weeks, but I think he's due for a big game. And this Chargers defense, you can run the football on them. Bosa's been hurt for them at defensive end, and they really just have not been the same. Obviously, Derwin James is back there at the safety position, but they have holes defensively, and I think you can expect a lot of Derrick Henry in this game. And I do like the Titans in this one, and we'll see about the over/unders 47. I think it may be under that, maybe a little bit low scoring game.
All right, and then you got the battle of just the ugliness Sunday night. Giants and Washington both squad 7-5-1. I know the percentages say if the Giants win it, they jump to like 85%. I'm not even worried about the playoffs. Go out and win the game on Sunday. Then we can talk. They should have beat them the first time around. They got way too conservative. The defense, the secondary, the injuries, we're seeing it. They got absolutely embarrassed by the Eagles the other day. I mean, that's a game where I didn't expect them to win, but if it's 14-0, Julian Love make a play on the ball, 7-0, make a play on the ball on 4th down. Maybe the complexion of the game changes. Saquon's hurt. They got no secondary. They got no one to stretch the field. And now you go into Washington that has better weapons, and you don't know if their defensive players are going to come. Washington's laying 4.5. I mean, if the Giants are worth their salt, if Barkley's worth his salt, if Jones is who we think he is, you have to go out and win that game. You have to.
Yes, this is a huge divisional battle. And you told me last week when we were talking about that Giants Eagles games, I was like, "Oh, beware a home dog" and all this stuff. And you're like, "Yeah, Lloyd, they're a dog, all right." And they just got mauled, as you said, by the Eagles. The Eagles just did whatever they wanted to, and they thoroughly embarrassed them. So this is a chance for the Giants to get that redemption and kind of answer the bell. But with Saquon being injured, he just didn't seem himself, and there are just not many other weapons out there. And defensively, a lot of holes. And you talk about this Commanders team, Heineke is one of those efficient, streaky quarterbacks. And when he gets McLaurin going and all the other weapons, Dotson and all the rest of them, running up and down the field, they can put some points up quick. So I think this is a Commanders game, and it could get high scoring if the Giants decide to kind of roll over like they did against the Eagles. So, I think that the Commanders will cover that 4.5 points, and the over under is 40. So, that number I think may get beat.
Wow. That's ridiculous. They need Leonard Williams. I don't know if they're going to have Jackson back. They need to clog up the middle. Washington might get Chase Young back. They might get Davis, their linebacker. They might get Sweat. These players are all questionable. It's a bad spot for the Giants, man. I mean, I just saw a team that did not look prepared to play against the Eagles. They weren't going to win that game, but that's a divisional game. That's your rival. That's where we can make a good showing and build upon it. And to your point about Saquon, it's so evident that he's hurt and he's banged up, but I got to see 20, 25 carries on Sunday night. But you're right. I mean, right now I'm leaning towards Washington covering that number. All right. Got about a minute. Give me a lackey from week 14 in game balls.
Sure. There was a lot to choose from. In terms of my game ball, I went with Brock Purdy, the rookie quarterback from the Niners. He did a great job. He not only beat the Bucs, he beat the GOAT. And 16 of 21, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 35-7 shellacking of the Bucs. And you talk about the Niners, can they keep this going? And it's their 6th straight win. And they're one of the top teams in the NFL for a reason. And we'll see if this rookie's able to keep it going Thursday night against Seattle. In terms of my lackey, I gave it away earlier. It's Mitch Trubisky.
That's my duck. That's my duck probably in agreeing with you.
Mitch Trubisky, 22 of 30, which was not bad, 276 yards, but 1 touchdown, 3 killer interceptions. And it's a game 16-14. They lose at home to the Ravens, and a rival game. The Ravens don't really even have a quarterback. They lose their quarterback Huntley after they lose Lamar before. And
yeah,
you were just thinking, okay, maybe the Steelers can steal this one. And obviously, they're out of the playoff hunt, but maybe Mike Tomlin can continue that non-losing season streak. But Trubisky didn't help. And if he's got to play for Pickett, who had a bad concussion, I think Steelers are in trouble this week too.
Yeah, I think one of my friends was tuning in. He just texted me to Lions, so who knows? He's a Lions fan. Go figure, right? He is Lloyd Vance at Lloyd Vance, NFL writer, researcher, historian, of course, contributor to BYP. All right, my friend, enjoy it. You got games Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday night. We'll see what kind of mood I am come next week. If I'm in a happy place, that means the Giants got to win. If I'm a little somber, it means the Giants got DL. But it's not good when you need other teams to start helping you out. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, a lot of football to watch, and just be a fan of the whole league.
That's all we can do, my friend. I appreciate a couple moments. Enjoy the games of the week, and we'll talk next week.
All right, thanks for having me on.
All right, there you have it. So, all right, so once again, don't forget good stuff from Lloyd. Check us out as well as all the gambling lines and the promos from our good friends over at Spooky Express. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You guys have been fantastic. Rich Q on Q. The numbers have gone up exponentially. A lot of views, a lot of comments, a lot of likes. Share, subscribe. We always appreciate it. Just a reminder, tomorrow we'll do it again, 27 in Q with Brandon Jacobs. Later in the week, let me just give you a little tidbit of some of the guests that we are going to be getting on board. Tony Catullo is going to give us a little Philadelphia perspective. We'll talk to him. Brandon Bell, former NFL linebacker, Penn State linebacker, is going to join us. Ryan Kramer does a great job as a sports gambling analyst. Lake Lewis, who covers Washington in the NFL. That'll be later on in the week. So we got a lot of shows to pump out. We appreciate everyone keeping us locked in. As always, give me a follow on Twitter at RichQ. Appreciate everyone joining us. And as we always like to close and say, if you say it, you play it. If you back it, you're going to stack it. Have a good Sports Tuesday. We will talk to you tomorrow.